Hey there, you, me, and DC fans, and welcome if you're new. I am the stepson of Krypton,
I Mantis.
and today we are discussing Superman and his checkered past. So, I don't want to waste too much time on the intro. Mantis, are you ready to get into this?
I am ready.
All right, guys, let's go. All right, guys. So, when we talk about Superman and his checkered past, obviously we are referring to the fact that over the course of Superman's life, he has, or at one time or another, garnered some hate by things that have happened within the realm of Superman. Most notably is everything going on with the current DCU, from the suit to the CGI to the person himself and him maybe having a little wonky eye going on, we don't know, and everything else like that. But we thought with all the hate that James Gunn's new Superman movie is getting and the birth of the DCU is getting, that we'd review a couple of incidents that maybe people kind of want to look over or don't want to talk about from Superman's past and previous movies. That while the franchises themselves may be looked at as iconic, there was a lot of hate back in the day, but obviously we didn't have the social media outlets and the people that are just wanting to be so vocal when they get behind the keyboard. So we thought we'd kind of reminisce and go through a couple of those. Mantis, how are you feeling on
Yeah.
that? Because the first one's going to include your favorite Superman.
Yeah. We can just kick it off. But I agree. There are episodes, there are series that I'm just not. If I had to rank them, and we can go through some of the IMDb ratings, but I would say, just because probably it depends on when you grew up watching, what Superman you grew up watching, depends on your viewpoint of whether you like these things or not. Or maybe there's just a particular episode of the series that you hated, or a particular part of a movie that you hated, right? Um, and I would say kind of Smallville is probably my favorite iteration of Superman, and again, it's probably due to the fact that that's kind of what I say. I didn't really grow up watching it. Like I was already an adult technically when I started watching it, because I didn't see the first couple seasons. Now I know you did. You watched it, I think, from the very beginning, right?
I did.
Yeah. So I did. I kind of came
2001.
in. Yeah, I came in a little later around season 4 or 5, so which is fine for me because I got to binge watch all of that on DVD back in the day. Because funny enough, they didn't switch to Blu-ray until I think like season 7 or 8 or something like that. But yeah, which I can't find my early DVD ones that I think they got destroyed in a move. Anyway, there are several episodes of Smallville. Now, the thing I will say, I'll start off on a good note there. The things that I did like about Smallville, and I think it lended itself as opposed to, let's say, other Superman TV shows, live action TV shows. We'll stipulate that because there are some very good animated. They don't kind of have the same constraints as live action Supermans do with budgets as well as um, set pieces. And that's kind of where I wanted to go with this Superman as opposed to some of the other ones. I like Smallville's set pieces. You can tell when the coffee shops. They did lots of wide angle shots of actual streets. They did shots of farm roads, of farmhouses, of you felt the way they filmed that show. You felt like you were in the town, right? But I think kind of where it kind of fell off, and again, there were some creative decisions that were kind of meh, you know. But I think kind of where it dove nose took a nosedive, and I know you totally agree with me on this because you put it on our note sheet here. Is the way they did Superman's best villain, I would say, was very stupid. I don't know who the hell decided one to write it that way, and then even if you're in the effects department, it still looked like garbage. Like I don't know how uh, that abomination was ever allowed to be in the show. I mean, I'm talking about Darkseid here being it. Everyone knows what Darkseid looks like, who Darkseid is, what he is. So making him a cloud of smoke, one, that's a creative decision. They actually wrote that on paper in script and they approved it. Secondly, someone actually had to make that in CGI and put it in the show, which is just blows my mind that that actually occurred.
Well, so if you remember at the end of season 9, we see the cloud come through because they sent the Kandorians out through, and Clark stays behind because he had the blue kryptonite or whatever. But we see the cloud of smoke, and it takes the shape of Darkseid, right? I'm thinking, okay, you're just doing that, right? Just
Right.
to showcase. And then we don't even really get another like view of Darkseid until the very end. You'll get some glimpses here and there and all that stuff, and we see several of his minions, the Court of Darkseid, which we've done a video on.
We
And
did.
then at the very end, yeah, he comes like you see him again as a cloud, and then he takes over Lionel Luthor's body, and then Superman flies through him, and that's it. End of story for Darkseid. His greatest villain, one of my favorite characters of all time. He just flies through him, and that's it. Now, the only thing with it is because we knew it was the finale. We got to see him fly. We got to see him when he goes and grabs the suit. That everybody kind of dismissed it, but once you had time to think about it, dude, people were hating on it. Right? I was one of them. I hated that. Like that I don't want to say it ruined Smallville, but it was so close because I'm like, how do you end it on it? You had such a great episode, but then that part almost killed it for me, right? But a lot of people, they're like, oh, Smallville's one of the greatest Superman franchises, and even though he's not Superman, he's pre-Superman. Um, we move
Yeah, and
on.
I would say kind of tying up the bow here on Darkseid. It's not the fact that like he took control of Lionel, because it's technically he can do that. That's with anti-life equations, some other stuff. Like he has that. He does, especially against weak minds. He can do that. It's not like, oh, he just gets this new power. He can control minds now. You know that's a thing. It's not that. It's just again. It's like if that was just a precursor to Darkseid in the show, that's fine. It's like they didn't have the ability to do a, hey, I'm going to throw a cell phone through here and I'm going to Darkseid. This is Darkseid paging you, Superman. I'm going to talk to you about it. Like they do some cool alien shit, right? That's fine, but
And
that's not
I'm
what
willing
happened.
to give you that, right? Like if you were planning on
Yeah,
a season 11, maybe you would have had Darkseid come. But the problem is, what got me though, and the reason why I can't go with that is because you had Apocalypse coming to Earth, right? So
right.
that
Yes,
was my big thing. If you didn't have that, like, or Apocalypse is literally getting ready to smash into Earth and all this, you have to then assume that that is Darkseid. Now, if they would have played that he's off in another galaxy and yeah, like they didn't show the boom tubes and everything else like that. That's where it
right.
got me. Right, you had a whole season to set that up, and you had a lot of fillers in season 10, and you didn't set up Darkseid. You didn't set up that. Yeah, like that's just his essence and his persona. That's not the real Darkseid. You had Apocalypse literally right by Earth, and you never. So you have to assume that was Darkseid, and that's how you did it. That's what I don't like. But it's
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 bad.
my favorite character, so we move on. Now, for those of you, if you think about, let's go back a little bit further to my favorite Superman, and then we're going to jump ahead to uh, Mantis's favorite. My favorite Superman, we have the Christopher Reeve franchise. Now, obviously, we'll go down as the most iconic. It's the first of the movies, not of live action, but it's first of the movies that we see Superman. Will kind of. I know there were some older ones here, but it was the first ones that probably anybody alive today is going to remember. But he was the iconic, you know, superhero Christopher Reeve. He kind of did it all. But we all tend to forget sometimes that even their own franchise, when they released Superman Returns, was they said it was took place after movie 2. They even wanted to forget 3 and 4 because in 3 we had him go kind of crazy and with some kryptonite, all that stuff. He basically split into two and he had to fight the evil version of himself. Which, if you're fans of the Arrowverse, when they find Kingdom Come Superman, who's played by Brandon Routh, he even says, "This isn't the first time that I've gone crazy and fought myself."
Actually, this is the second time I've gone nuts and fought myself.
which is reference to Superman 3. And you had the whole kind of computer thing, which nowadays you would think would be Brainiac, but it wasn't. It was just this
Hey, that
AI-ish
whole
kind of
scene
supercomputer.
freaked me to that whole you know what scene I'm talking about,
Yeah,
that like where it gets caught in there and it like turns her in like
they're
that.
worth a
As a
watch,
kid,
but they're not great. And then obviously we
no.
had Superman 4, A Quest for Peace, that gets probably the most hate and the most made fun of with Nuclear Man. And it just,
Yeah.
that's kind of like you see in a couple like the Superman Doomsday animated movie, the original Superman movie, Superman Doomsday animated movie. He is doing that. He's trying to find a cure for cancer. And he's like, I can't stop this from, metastasizing in human cells and all this stuff.
Can design a machine that receives faint transmissions from the distant future, sculpt a miniature sun from dwarf star matter, but I can't find a way to keep human cells from metastasizing.
Where it's kind of like Quest for Peace. He's just like, I gotta find, I gotta, bring peace to, Earth and all that stuff. And that's why Family Guy, he makes fun of it. He goes, I must be Superman 4, the Quest for Peace. He goes, oh, that's why they call it that.
The only way for me to solve this crisis is to be Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Yeah.
And all that. So you have four movies, and only two of them were iconic, and the other two are laughable to most people and want to forget. Even diehard Superman fans like myself want to forget the other two, right? But the franchise is still considered iconic. Christopher Reeves is down in history. Or Christopher Reeve, sorry, I was going to say Christopher Reeves Superman, and we've talked about it many times because somebody called me out on it. Like a lot of times, I'm thinking of
It's
him in the
possessive.
in
That
the
one part's funny.
possessive, right?
Yeah.
But Christopher Reeves Superman will go down as one of the most iconic of Superman of all time, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
let's flash forward to Mantis's favorite, Man of Steel. Now Mantis, you know what I'm talking about when I say about hate, right?
Oh yeah. 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 This we talked about this in a couple movies ago, a couple videos ago because we were
Some of
we were
ours
looking
are
at how
long enough
much.
to be movies.
Yeah, they are. We were talking about the box office and it not being very popular, which that movie did again, as we said, did not. It was not popular at all at the box office. Did not make a lot of money. There was various reasons for that. Again, it was the first Superman. I think it was very like I remember the hype for that movie being great. I think when people watched it though, the rewatch value for a lot of people in theaters wasn't as well received. The tone of it again is a complete 180 from the hopefulness that the uh, stereotypical Superman show, movie, comic has. And we're getting back to that nowadays with James Gunn's portrayal of Superman, or so we're told. Again, haven't seen it, but that's kind of the rumor that it's more went back to the old Superman, Truth, Justice, the American Way stuff. While Zack Snyder's Superman, Man of Steel was I hate keep saying this, but it was dark. Like that's the whole period of DC. That time period was dark. Even Superman films. This one, for sure. We always talk about this being a more realistic version of Superman. That's kind of the way I look at it. It's a very realistic version of how Superman would act, how Clark would be um, as Superman. Let's say a couple of things in that movie that I didn't really care for, as well as most people. But we'll just kind of go down the top highlights here. Superman not saving his dad. That would never happen. He would save his dad. I don't care if
Well,
he had to run out; he would do it.
here's the thing I don't get
Yes.
is even back then his speed was great enough that he probably could have. First off, why didn't you let him go get the damn dog himself? But he
Yeah.
could have gotten out. He could have got his dad and saved him. Right now, in the
Yeah.
original Superman movie, his dad died of a heart attack. I understand, especially since they're very far away, that even with his speed, you're not going to stop a fatal heart attack. Right. There's limits to what Superman's good. So that's why I always liked, and even in Superman and Lois, even in Smallville, he's always died of a heart attack because that's something that you just. And that's the whole point is you have a character that is as powerful as Superman, but there are things that even he can't stop. Right? Heart attack is one of them.
Yeah.
A fucking tornado is not one of them. Right? That gives me PTSD thinking back to the Superman Returns video game that we've talked about multiple
Yeah.
times. When I'm fighting a tornado, I'm like, why? Like, no.
It's a joke on his greatest villain, the tornado man.
Yeah,
He
like
clearly can't beat him, even in Man of Steel.
I
You
can't
know?
get a movie without Lex or a tornado. I can't get a video game without Lex or a tornado being as big as villains. I'm like, how are they teaming up? But like, yeah, that I didn't like that. Right? I
It
wish he would have
bothers
just
me.
stuck with the original hard attack. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, it bothers me. That part, I know it bothered a lot of people too. It made no sense. Superman would have saved his dad. Like he just would have. And don't give me this, like you said, well, people were watching, blah, blah. No, he could have no, it would have been a blink. He would have been, no one would have even noticed. He would have been gone. And it would have been fine. Plus it's not like everyone was watching this happen. Like there's so much crap. People were, no, what it would have been fine. The second thing that I'll bring up is, and I kind of, this is more in the realistic aspect that I'm gonna talk about here, is the destruction level of Metropolis in the Zod fight. Well, the Zod fight and the engines doing their job, the world engines. Again, this shouldn't be spoilers here, but trying to terraform the world is pretty cool concept. But to do that, if you're going to make this impending doom feel real, you're going to have to destroy some shit. Secondly, if you've got two aliens with super godlike powers fighting in a metropolis area, like a very urban area, there's gonna be some casualties. Shit is gonna go down, including multiple buildings. So the fact that that happened is, like I said, realistic. um is it Does it fall in line with how Superman would do it? No. He would try and take that fight out in the middle of BFE where there is nobody, or in space. So yeah, go ahead.
So, if you ever watch, guys, if you ever watch the How It Should Have Ended, where they do a lot of the animated on these movies on how they should have ended, and they do Man of Steel, and they're like, oh, they see the ship like when it's overhead before he's even come down. He's like, "Oh, let me go ask my space dad, what we should do." And he tells him, he goes, "Oh, get the two world engines to collide before it ever happens, right?" And then he stops Zod before it even comes down to Earth and creates all this destruction. Why are you sitting in a church asking this reverend guy like what you should do instead of going talking to your dad who knows Zod? Like I don't. It didn't make sense. He could have told you, "Hey, instead you wait all this time and there's all this destruction, and then Lois has to find out and tell you." Like, why didn't you immediately go ask Jarrell how you stopped
Yeah.
Zod? And he would have told you, "Oh, if you could take your ship and hit his ship while it's still in space, you could
Yeah.
send him
Yeah,
back
yeah.
into the Phantom Zone."
He does. If only there was someone I could turn to for guidance about this
You
situation.
mean like a random priest?
No, not a random priest. Someone who would actually know something about Zod specifically. Someone who actually knew him. Oh, wait, my space dad!
I love that though because it does make you think. Sorry, I'll cut
Yeah.
and clip it here, but that it's a great
No.
on the How It Should Have Ended. So
Yeah,
I'll get
yeah.
my space dad.
Yeah, it's another, I won't say a plot hole, but it kind of is. It's again like, but either way, again, let's just say we get past that and it's like we're already in the box of we're in fight mode. Like that, we're already past that. We're in fighting, right?
Okay, so skip
There's so
past
much
the
destruction. Yeah,
What's the next
there's so much
thing?
destruction. The next thing is, of course, Superman breaking a pretty big rule, and that's killing someone, killing an enemy. And he does snap Zod's neck again. No spoilers. This movie's been out forever. You should know that happens. I do like. I honestly, this part, I didn't have a big issue with it, and primarily why is because the way Clark reacts, or the way that Superman reacts to having to do that, something he's never done. And he didn't want to do it, clearly. He says it multiple times before he does it, and people did not like the fact that Superman killed Zod.
That is probably the biggest nail in Man of Steel's coffin, right? That was the thing that everybody hated, is because Superman is always within the comics saying, "I will find another way," right? There's always another way. Now, kind of like in the movie Hancock with Will Smith when he lets the train hit him and he derails it, destroys it. Like, why didn't you just go straight up?
You're the one that threw the dude's car at her. And what's with the train?
Why didn't you just go straight up in the air with the car?
He could have just gone straight up with Zod. He could have put his hand over Zod's eyes. Now it would have burned his hand, but he heals, right? Like,
Right.
there were a multitude of other options you could have taken before snapping his neck. You could have literally just flown him straight out of there. right? And that's what people had
Mhm.
a problem with. I get that it was this existential crisis, and he screams, and then of course he puts his head right, Lois's lap there. I would have done the same thing with Amy Adams,
Mm.
but
Yep.
there was another way, and that's always Superman's thing. Is he is the heart and soul of the Justice League, even though in the Absolute universe and things like that, or Justice League Unlimited universe, they're playing it that the Martian Manhunter is. Superman has always been the moral compass that leads the Justice League, right? There's always another way. You don't have to kill. Now, I know that in Batman v Superman, a lot of people hated that Batman killed, but he was portraying the darker side of Batman that has been portrayed for a long time in the comics.
He's had enough shit. Had
Yeah,
enough shit.
where
Yeah.
Superman is not, but that was people's biggest hate, was that he killed somebody, right? And it could have been, we don't know. I'm not going to say it is, but it could have been the first nail in the coffin of the franchise, right? Because again, Man of Steel didn't
Mhm.
do great in the box office when you think of what the production budget was versus marketing,
Mhm.
and then what it drew in. It didn't. I mean, it didn't get close to $1 billion, right? And in superhero movies in the nowadays, that's what you got to be pushing closer towards, right? Um, so that was the kind of the nail in the DCEU's coffin. Now, if we go back and we look at some of the other TV shows and things, like we'd mentioned Superman and
Mhm.
Lois, and Lois and Clark, flip that around, the
Mhm.
New Adventures of Superman. I don't think there was anything that really other than Smallville with the dark side thing, with TV, they've done a really good job, I think, bringing him to the small screen. And I don't think they've like Superman and Lois. To me, there were a couple of parts I'm like, well, you could have done this different. But definitely Superman and Lois, there wasn't anything that I said that I was like, oh, this ruined, or this put a black stain on the character, right?
Mhm.
And same thing with Lois
And
and
that's the
Clark.
lowest that like of the top 10 in the collider of the top 10 rated Superman TV shows, animated or live action, that's the lowest rated one at 6.7 IMDb rating. And that's not even
Lois
that
and
bad.
Clark.
Yeah, Lois and Clark
Yeah,
News Adventures.
got a
Yeah.
6.7. And then actually Superman and Lois has a 7.8, whereas Smallville only has a 7.5. So Superman and Lois got a higher IMDb
Mhm.
rating than
Oh yeah.
Smallville. Now, if you've watched it, it's only 4 seasons. I agree. Like, I'm sorry, because also I think we're comparing apples to oranges, because in Superman and
Mm.
Lois, he's been Superman for 20 years, right? He's like
Yeah.
Batman and
Completely
Batman v
different
Superman.
character,
He's
essentially.
he's been Superman for a very long time. Uh, and yeah, the budgets are higher, and obviously CG is better. But I think
Mhm.
overall, like I don't pull any hate from Superman and Lois. I also don't pull any hate. There are some episodes that are pretty rough. The whole Lois and Clark New Adventures of Superman, the whole Lois being a clone where they used frog genetics and
Yeah.
stuff. Those are a couple of
Yeah.
rough ones, and they're definitely
Yeah.
fillerish, kind of stupid. But the overarching themes behind it, I think those two shows did great. But you know, it is funny to think about the parts of the Supermans that, like, again, all
And
of basically
again,
movies 3 and 4, what happened in Smallville, what happened in Man of Steel, and thus far we've seen a 34-second trailer, and I feel like, just personal opinion, this movie's almost getting more hate.
it is. It is. And again, we've said this before, live action, I'm just of the three live action newer Superman shows, um it's hard to do Superman because the top 3 rated in IMDb of Superman TV shows are all animated. Mentioned this before, it's easier to put comic book characters in animation. You can do things that you can't do in live action, or if you try to do them in live action, it costs you a lot of money. And let's be real, like in the 90s when they were doing, Superman and the New Adventures, like
Lois and
it's
Clark,
not
New
like
Adventures of
yeah,
Superman,
yeah, it's not like they
93 to
had the
97.
budget. Yeah, they didn't have the budget to do good CG, nor did they even exist back then. Like realistically, we've all seen Spawn and the terrible CGI in Spawn.
All right, you overgrown gecko. Come and get your throat cut.
which needs a remake. And it's hard to do that stuff back then. And I agree with you. Like, of all of the live action, so don't get me wrong, like, I love Smallville, but the episodes that I've seen spotted here and there of Superman and Lois, it's by far the best. It's not even close. So
And I'll say this too, kind of final thoughts ish, even though we don't really do that as much anymore on the channel here. But
yeah.
like, I gave Superman and Lois the hardest time because I didn't like how Superman, Tyler Hoechlin's character, was portrayed as Superman in the Supergirl, because obviously
Yeah.
coming off the CW, there was a lot of wokeness injection. Sorry, guys, that's a quick just mention of it, but there was a lot of BS. And even if you don't want to say wokeness, I don't like that. And I get it's Supergirl, but they always made her so much more powerful than Superman. I'm like, that's not the case. It's never been the
No.
case. So I didn't like the way they did that, and so I didn't really, I wasn't as big a fan of his character. But once he got into Superman and Lois, man, it was a complete shift, and the series is great. All 4 seasons are available on HBO Max. I definitely, it's not even worth a watch. It is worth you need to go and pay
You
attention.
need to see it.
Great series.
Yeah.
Still love the Lois and Clark, but yeah, I mean, I would put, because obviously with Superman, I would put that at the number 1. Smallville's here, and then Lois and Clark. But to me, in my heart, they're all 3 very closely tied, because they all have separate things that just make me love them. Right? I don't want to put any of them above one another. Same thing with the movies, right? Other than 3 and 4. And
I will say
I'll
the
give you
comedy
Superman
writing.
Returns.
The comedy writing, in Lois and Clark is pretty funny. The couple episodes, the Tempest episodes, like, there's some funny stuff that they
The
did.
thing is, it's kind of like video games, and we've talked about it on a couple of videos we released about video games that you guys have not liked. But it's one of those that when you don't have the CG kind of budget, you have to include story and comedy and things. Like, it makes you have to do that more. So I think that's where he's just like, look, I'm mild mannered reporter, Clark Kent.
Mild-mannered
No,
reporter.
I'm Superman.
Yeah.
How dumb was she?
Was
Like, I love that. Like, there are some great episodes, and then there's some bad ones.
How dumb was she? Here, I'll show you what I mean.
Ed,
Look, I'm Clark Kent. No, I'm Superman.
And it's kind of funny because I feel like, even with Smallville, when they did the witch thing and all that, like, there were some really bad episodes. Even in season 4.
Yeah.
Season 4 had some terrible
Dude.
episodes, but it also had some of the best of the series, right? So it was
True.
a roller
Yeah.
coaster.
Yeah. That Smallville was very much a roller coaster of a series. There was some good. I didn't even remember. I didn't even think about the witch stuff, because that was just like, what are we doing here? Like, this is.
I get
This
it.
is
Like,
way out
looking
there.
back, I get it, because you need something that's going to affect Superman, which obviously he's vulnerable to magic. So maybe
Magic, yeah.
I'll give you that. Like, but just the way they went about it, it wasn't great. But there were so many episodes in season 4 that were so great that it's kind of like we talk about season 10. You just look past the bad, right? And I feel like the movie has got kind of like super final thoughts here. You got to kind of do the same thing. You got to look past, maybe there's 1 or 2 bad things. Maybe there's some CG that's just not great, or maybe there's something you don't like, but you got to look past the bad to the overall, what are we getting to, right? Now, if it's just a terrible movie, it's a terrible movie, and I'll support you if I watch it. I'm like, oh, fuck, that's terrible. But we got to give it a chance, right? Because we've given all these other Superman, iterations that have had some glaring oversights. We've given them a chance, and some of them are still, absolutely wonderful to this day. I love everything we just mentioned, all of the series and movies. I love them to this day. Only thing I don't love is the Nintendo 64 Superman game.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of that. Or the fact that Lex banged some old chick to steal her money.
And you've shown me pleasures that I've never known.
That was stupid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I know Superman, whole Superman Returns. The only thing I love about Superman Returns is that they do the plane scene, which is iconic for Superman coming into like where he gets
Sure.
discovered in the comics and everything else. And I thought the plane scene was great because he tries to grab the wing. I'm like, dude, you're not gonna take the wing. And it's kind of like Homelander says. He's like, either I'll punch right through the hole or the plane goes ass over tit. Like
Gotta go out there, lift the plane up.
Lift the plane? How? There's nothing to stand on. It's fucking air.
I don't know, fly at it, ram it straight.
That kind of speed, either the plane goes ass over tit or I'll punch straight through the hull.
He's very realistic about the fact that you just can't go and grab a plane out of the sky. There's weight ratios and there's force on a small surface that you would just disintegrate. So I love that they did that. But I thought that was great, and the Gatling gun and shooting his eye, all that was good. I thought the way
cool,
they did the effects of Superman were great. Everything else in that movie was dog shit.
Yep, I agree.
But it's still Superman, so I'll still watch it. And I still think Brendan Routh did a great job.
Even the stupid kid.
Yeah.
The stupid super kid.
Well,
Another
and they
dumb
tried
bag.
to bring that Man of
Anyway.
Steel or in the Zack Snyder version there. You
Mm.
saw the pregnancy test. I'm like, don't fucking do it.
Don't.
And you
Yeah,
killed the whole
do
universe.
not.
And I'm like, maybe that was for the best, right? Because you're going to try to bring in a kid. They're like, no. So, guys, all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it here because we will continue to go on about this because we are very, very passionate about all of these Superman projects. If you have made it with us this far, we definitely thank you, our DC and Superman fans. So, if you have, you might as well go ahead and give the video a like. I'm probably pointing opposite just because I realized my screens have flipped. He's showing you where. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. You can go ahead and put your hands down. Stop it. Stop it. No. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our Superman videos because we are etching ever so close to the summer of Superman, which will be kicked off by Action Comics releasing the first or a reprint of Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman. And then the month after that, we have the Superman movie releasing. So be subscribed, have the little bell clicked and all that stuff so you get notified when we release these.
It's going to be here the next month. Please, like Cal said, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That's the biggest thing because in the next month or so, we're going to start getting this rollout of all of this marketing material. We're going to see TV spots. We're going to see interviews. We're going to see red carpet debuts.
We may see a full trailer.
We may. Who knows? It may happen. It may happen. But we're going to be here all for it. And make sure you come to Yumi and DC because we will cover all of that stuff.
That was such a wonderful way you explained it, and then you ended it with stuff. I was like, okay.
I had to write a review for work this week, and I caught myself in the middle of the review. I was like, so and so does a great job. He's always there, and does a great job with this stuff. And I'm like, I can't put stuff in a review. It's just you can't say that.
But you put it in the description to our fandom here. Okay, great. So you see what he thinks of you.
They know what I mean. They know what I mean. This isn't in a review.
That, to be fair, most of you probably aren't watching to this point here. So before we go off the rails, guys, that is going to do it for us on this episode of You, Me, and DC. Until next time, guys, we will see you then.
Later.